The Jaguars are going to a youth movement. What does that mean for impending free agents? I'll talk about it today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, Tony Wiggins. And you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's visual or on audio. Make sure whatever location you go to for your podcast, you tap in each and every day so you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. What up to the everydayers joining us here? Here's what you're going to get on this beautiful day. Playing the youngsters. The Jags are going to a youth movement. I'll talk about that and how important that is and significant for those players. Drafted players going elsewhere, guys that will hit free agency that the Jaguars drafted but won't re-sign. And the ones that they haven't re-signed recently. This is the first year where it's really, really relevant, though, because this is the first year where Trent Baalke's class actually hits free agency. So 2025 free agents that are going to be available, that's where we're going to start. We're not going to bury the lead. The main one for me is Andre Cisco. I had high hopes for Andre Cisco as a player. I liked him on tape when he was in college. I was a big fan of his. I wondered a little bit when Joe Cullen was here and was the defensive coordinator why they didn't put him on the field more early. But it turns out he was coming off of an ACL out of college. He got drafted in the third round. And it turns out that maybe they were right for holding him back a little bit. I know we all got angry, but Joe Cullen kind of knows what he's doing as a coach, right? So maybe a part of it was just us wanting to get that talent on the field because we didn't think there was anybody out there that was actually better, right? So the team was really, really bad that year. He came out the second year, and then you saw that potential, and you saw him being able to be a force, speed coming from the center field, that single high. And I started thinking in my head, oh, man, we have a guy with some of the traits and characteristics of like one of the best that has ever done it. You know, not Ed Reed now. Ed Reed is the GOAT. But I'm mainly referring to somebody like Earl Thomas, you know, that had the range, the physicality, the mindset, and then all of a sudden Cisco kept not being healthy, right? I thought this past season would be a huge one for Andre Cisco. In fact, I was under the impression that when they signed or re-signed an extension for Tyson Campbell, that the next person in line was going to be Andre Cisco. It hasn't materialized. And I don't know if it's because maybe he's playing out of position. Maybe the new defensive staff and the new system that they put in wasn't what was conducive to him playing well. Or it could just be this. And this is what we have to realize. Maybe he's just not as good as I thought he was. And the Jaguars are sitting there. They're going to need safety help, and they're going to let him walk. And it probably won't cost a whole bunch to keep him. I think they're going to let him walk anyway, because he wasn't even in the starting lineup the other day. And that's part of the theme for the show the other day. It's like where they are as a franchise. You ever ask yourself, like, one of the things that you can tell how well you drafted is not just how well your guys play for you, but when they hit free agency, how nobody wants them. They're not coveted. I can count on my hand the guys. I count on one hand the guys that Jawan Taylor. He's the guy that the Jaguars drafted and got a big money deal somewhere else. Now, some people will argue, well, they overpaid for him. Well, whatever. Somebody wanted him. So the thing is why are the Jaguars always buyers? It goes back to the movie Baby Boy with Tyrese and Omar Gooding were outside a liquor store. He was like, there's two types of people in the world. P is buyers and sellers. It's commerce. It's what it's called. You're either a buyer or you're a seller, right? Well, the Jaguars are always buyers in free agency. And very rarely, when their free agents are cut loose, are people like knocking the doors down to come in and sign their guys. So that's kind of a sign that y'all ain't doing real well. You know, that's kind of what that is. It's kind of like, yeah, we don't want none of them. We didn't want them when they came out of the draft, and we sure enough don't want them now. And that's a rough position to be in when you're using everyone else around the league as a farm system, because you're only getting what they allow you to have. You can't draft your own guys too successfully, although lately they have done a better job, but we have to see who's going to be next up to get a contract here in Jacksonville. So the ones that I marked off mainly were Andre Sisco, Cole Van Lannon, because of his depth. Trust me, they don't need to be losing anybody's, even if they're depth guys. The Jaguars don't need to lose anybody that's in that top 8 rotation on the line. They just need to go from being like number 7 to number 9 as they add people or something like somewhere like that, right? I know y'all say, well, then you only do that to go from 7 to 9, you're only adding 2. No, that means we're getting rid of Brandon Sheriff too. Even though I was impressed with Sheriff the other day on a pass play, Sheriff was running down the field like a young man, but it'll probably be time. One of the things that you can watch and monitor with the Jaguars is where they spend their money. Not only where they get their players from, but where they actually spend their money. That'll give you an idea of what they value. It'll also tell you league-wide what the positional value is for certain players. There were a lot of corners I thought they should have got last year, and they signed Ronald Darby. And I said, okay, well, Doug's familiar with him. They won a championship together. Chris Richard was familiar with him and understood his game. He's familiar with his game. So I wasn't as down on it as a lot of people. Boy, are they hitting me up now. With Ronald Darby sitting on the sideline and Doug Peterson going out of his way. He didn't go out of his way, but he answered the question yesterday, and somebody asked him, was it really pretty much a youth movement? He said, yeah, we're going to see what we got with these young guys. So for those tank people, the people that say you should tank, this is a more appropriate way to say what you hope they do. Let's see what we have in these young guys. That's another term that is probably overused, kind of like kicking the tires, but let's see what we got. Let's see what we have. And they put them out there. I heard a coach say the other day in college, he says you can't complain when a guy doesn't have experience when you didn't give him any. It's like when you ask what's wrong with a player, and you go, oh, he's good, he's solid. Yeah, he's got this, he doesn't have much experience. Well, how long has he been there? 3 years. Yeah, it's on you. You should have played him to see what he had. That's kind of the thing that I have been saying with Walker Little this whole time, right? Monteric Brown is getting a lot of playing time in the defensive backfield, and Ronald Darby's over there making $5 million and just over there just chilling, eating pecans and biting his fingernails and relaxing on the sideline. That's tongue in cheek. It's not really what he's doing, but you get my point. The point is the Jaguars are sort of going towards this little youth movement that we're going to talk about later, but that's the appropriate way you quote unquote tank. You put guys out there that's trying to make plays and is trying to win, but really the goal is for them to gain experience and to show you something. Because when they show you that, that's going to make you realize whether or not you need to keep them around in free agency. And there's a lot more that goes into it. And guess what? We're going to get into it. And I'm going to tell you all of the stuff that goes into why people re-sign their draft picks and why they let them go. And then we'll apply it to the Jaguars and say, okay, who's that? But they really got to turn more into selective sellers as opposed to buyers. And I'll explain what I mean by selective sellers in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Gametime. You are never too late to buy tickets at Gametime for any event, whether it's sports, plays, comedy shows, monster trucks, does not matter. You are never too late, even if the event has already started. Gametime has curated deals that make it easier for you to find the best price on great seats. The super deal, seat views before you buy, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and even more. The priority for me, though, is the Game Time picks, a secure curation, which makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and all of the rest of that. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. I'm going to spell a redeem code for you. It's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And today's show is brought to you and sponsored by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the stretch run in the NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Now, I know your team ain't winning. If your team ain't winning, if you like the Jaguars, you can still win some money. You know, they got point spreads on there. You know, they got all of that stuff. So you can still get paid, right? Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. No more trying to change your screen and swipe your screen in that hot sun when you're at the game. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen, as usual. And I'm going to just continue to discuss buyers and sellers. And what I mean by being a selective seller is, like, for instance, the way that they were with Walker Little. They said, nope, we got some guys as free agents. You know what? We're going to keep our own. We're not going to let him get to the market. But we might allow Andre Cisco to go on out there. And I don't know that they didn't reach out to Cisco. I don't know if they didn't try to work out a one-year deal or small. I don't know if they tried to work out some sort of a small extension, maybe a 2-year extension. I do not know that. I would not be privy to that information. But I'm telling you, everything is pointing towards Andre Cisco kind of moving on here a little bit with the Jacksonville Jaguars, from the Jacksonville Jaguars after this season. Just real quick, I'll run through some of the other guys that are scheduled to become free agents this season. Like I said, Cisco's the main one. He's the one who has played the most minutes and is the one that's most significant. Mac Jones, quarterback, scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent. Will they keep him home? Has he done enough to make somebody want to Sam Darnold him? No, I don't think that's the case. And Sam Darnold also has these crazy physical traits where that ball fires out of his arm. You know, he has a hose, man. He throw a strawberry through a locomotive, and he has those traits. He's a big kid too. So he's more in line to get paid this year. And I know Mac Jones came here with the opportunity. When Mac Jones came here, the idea wasn't for him to play. Let's be clear about that. Nobody wanted him to come in here and play. They wanted him to come in here and be a dude who you can win some games with. You can run your stuff. He's that kind of player. I think Mac's going to get a check for 12 years total in the NFL. He's going to be around for a long time. Conscientious, smart, has started some games, has led a team to the playoffs before, but nobody really, really wanted him to have a chance to play. And he's had a chance to play. Now, what has he done with that chance? He's had 4 appearances. He's been all right. He still throws some balls that Doug Peterson described it as a couple of balls he wish he could have back. But see, those 2 balls you could have back, you can't do that because that makes you Jameis Winston. You just can't always have a couple of balls. He says he's done a nice job. He just has a couple of balls he needs to. There are 2 interceptions in a close game against a bad team. You can't have it. You throw a couple of balls that go the other way that you wish you could have back. If you do that in every game, you end up with 34 interceptions and you get a 30 and 20 years. That's just the way it goes. And you just can't have that. So I think his days are numbered as a starter. Okay. I think he's a career backup at this point. And I think the Jaguars would be smart to bring him back. Depends on if they keep the staff, of course. That makes all the difference. If they keep the GM, if they keep, there's a lot of reports out there about all of this stuff too. And of course, we'll do that podcast tomorrow. But I don't think. I think that the best thing you can do with him is have him as a sort of a long-term 2 or 3 year backup, so that there's always at least consistency in that quarterback room. That would be the thing I do for him. Running back Dearness Johnson. Dearness has been all right, man. He ain't been terrible, but obviously, the two guys they have in front of him are more of a priority. But sure, I think you bring him back on a deal to make him your third running back. I don't think they have any big issues with him. Usually with running backs, the thing about running backs is being healthy, and the other thing is pass protection. And I don't think he suffers with either one of those things. So he's not a one-trick pony. He's got some versatility. Tim Jones, the wide receiver. I think we're at the point now, although I said this with Tyler Shatley years ago, and Tyler Shatley just came back. He's still hanging on, right? I think we're at the point now where we know that we've seen the ceiling of Tim Jones. They always held out hope because of his speed, because of his size. And I'm not casting aspersion on him and his career, because Tim Jones has been in the league for like 5-6 years now. And that's a long time, especially when I know a whole bunch of guys that didn't make it. So give him his credit. He doesn't make a whole bunch of money, but at best for a team like Jacksonville, he's going to be the 5th receiver. And he's a good special teams player. So maybe he sticks around because of that. Or do you get to the point where you want to invest in a young guy and see if a young guy can develop? Remember, guys like Steve Smith and Antonio Brown were special teams guys when they were young, and they ended up being Hall of Famer and should be a Hall of Famer, but probably a borderline Hall of Famer. Tight end Luke Farrell. I think Luke is worth keeping. I think Luke has played a lot of downs. I think you know what you got with him. He can pass catch and he can block. I think he's a nice little combination of a really good tight end 4 or maybe a tight end 3 on a team that can win it all. Josiah Dugara, he's been up and down practice squad. I don't think he's going to be too much of a priority. Brandon Sheriff, I do believe this is going to be it for him. I don't think they're going to keep him, even though I don't think he's played terrible. He's been a little bit better this year than he was last year, but he makes a lot of money. And I don't think if he comes back, he's going to come back without making a bunch of money. Walker Little was scheduled to be one of those guys, but he's obviously re-signed 3 years, a little over $40 million. Blake Hance, another unrestricted free agent. I think he probably wants to get out there and check that market out, man, and see if there's somebody that would, if there's a situation that will allow him to come in and maybe not be a starter for somebody, but allow him to come in and maybe, like for instance in Miami, where they have someone like one of their older players like Teron Armstead, and he may go down. And even if they don't like Blake Hance at tackle, if they think he's a guard, maybe they move one of the guards out, like Eichenberg, move him back out to tackle. That way, if you look at a team that has older players, that's a good spot for Blake Hance, especially if that team doesn't have a bunch of salary cap space. And if they don't pick high in the draft and they have some other needs, that'd be a good spot for you to be a swing guy, right? And if the player is older, you're not going to be that here because the players are younger. And the Jaguars are going to, I believe, bring even more young offensive linemen in. So you'll be sort of like a journeyman who at best can be at the end of the depth chart. Cole Van Lanen, a name I mentioned earlier. Now, he's a restricted free agent, so I don't think they're going to let Cole Van Lanen get out of here. And teams ain't going to really try to make a serious play for him. And that's good because that's exactly what the Jaguars need. And I think he's the dude that has done enough to go ahead and get another 1-year deal from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Defensive lineman Isizi Otomowayo. I hope I got that right? Isizi Otomowayo. They've given him a lot of run when fans have thought that run should go to the rookie Mason Smith. But they have used him and say, hey, no, man, we're going to play him. It's his turn. He's up. Don't know if they're going to keep him. I really don't. Deshaun Dixon, he's an exclusive rights guy, but I think he got banged up, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, these are the guys. See, and this is what I get back to. Oh, the last person is Jeremiah Ledbetter. Ledbetter is an interesting guy, man, because he's a good, solid rotational defensive lineman, but he's like in year 9 now. And this is a kind of player where you got to kind of like make a decision. And he might be a player who's done enough to make a decision to say, no, you know what I'll do? I'll go up to Detroit and I'll be their 4th defensive tackle. They need people because they keep getting banged up. And all those injuries Detroit had, the Jaguars trade deadline is too bad because, well, you never want people to get hurt. But if this has happened before the trade deadline, the Jaguars will have a lot of players that they can move to Detroit. But then at the trade deadline, the Jaguars weren't eliminated too, so it doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. But that's just how that lines up, man. You kind of wish the Jaguars could call Detroit right now and say, hey, we got some young guys here. We ain't going to re-sign. Sort of like they did with Cam Robinson, sort of like they did with Roy Robinson Harris. If Detroit knew now what they knew then what they do now, boy, the Jaguars, hey, we'll send you Cisco. Y'all banged up. We'll send you a Ledbetter. But knowing Trent, he'd only get a 6th-round pick for it. All right, man. So playing the youngsters, some of the youngsters that we want the Jaguars to display for us, and some of the things we want to see since they're going young. We'll talk about that and more here on Locked On Jaguars. Y'all know what time it is, man. You got to know what time it is. It is college football time. It's that time of year where college football playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoffs begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, SMU versus Penn State. Woo! At Penn State. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. We're your team every day. I did not mean to do that. I keep trying to just make sure I'm all, ready to talk. And every now and then I smack like I'm eating a pickle. And there's some people that told me, man, I keep hearing you smack your lips. Stop doing that. So it's an accident. I didn't mean to do it. Playing the youngsters. We saw some young players in the secondary play the other day. Antonio Johnson was in the lineup. Darnell Savage was moved to Andre Cisco's free safety spot. And they pretty much went with a 4-2-5. Antonio Johnson played a lot, but he didn't start. Jarian Jones started at slot. So here's what's going to happen. I think Jarian Jones is going to cement himself as the slot corner. And granted, now they might make changes. They might make staff changes that makes all of this stuff change. And the new GM wants a whole new different group of players. But I think what we can see is we can really, really see Jarian growing and gaining the experience and doing the things that will allow the team to say, you know what, we're good at that spot. We don't need to do anything. We need to keep that young guy right there and give him more of a shot. Monteric Brown. Are they going to go with Monteric Brown, better known as Buster? Is he going to be good enough for them down the stretch for them to not go corner? I don't think so. But that doesn't mean that Buster Brown won't be the type of dude they want to keep around as a third corner, as a dime corner, as a guy who can provide some depth if they go out and upgrade that position, which I fully expect them to do in the draft. Or if they don't do it in the first round and then they come right back around in the second or third round, they'll create a situation where there's competition. DeAndre Prince was mentioned by name by Doug Peterson. He says, hey, man, we just got to get him out there and see what he can do. He's done everything we've asked him to do. And so there's a lot that goes into this. It's more than just practice. It's more than just those reps. See, the game film and the rep is going to just tell you whether or not these guys can transfer what they've done working out privately onto the practice field. If they haven't done the work privately, if they haven't shown up early, if they haven't been there, if they haven't broken mentally to the point where they say, man, I ain't playing anyway. So if they're always grinding, if they're always trying, and they're preparing as if they're going to play and they're doing all of those things, a lot of times those things go noticed. So now what they do on the field just gives you an idea of where they are based on real game action as opposed to just practicing. So I think a lot of these decisions have been put in place because a lot of these young guys have continued to do the work. And this is what those young guys wait for. They wait for the team. They don't want the team to start losing, but they know there's two ways you can get on the field. If a guy gets hurt, well, if a guy stinks, if a guy gets hurt, it's three. If a guy doesn't play well, if a guy gets hurt, or if the team loses and they get to the point where they need to start evaluating their roster and coming up with a plan for the future. And I think that's where they are right now. The injury part of it didn't happen. There can be a healthy debate or not whether or not some guys sucked, and that a lot. If guys sucked, it means they know that they're moving on from them after these next 3 or 4 games. There would be no reason other than Andre Cisco not being healthy, with Darnell Savage being moved back to free safety, and now you're playing Jarian Jones in the slot. Either Jarian Jones is a better slot than Savage, or you think Savage is a better safety than Andre Cisco, right? And now with the system they're not running split safeties. They're more or less running a 4-2-5, 65% of the 70% of the time in the NFL. So it diminishes the value of Cisco because Savage was brought here to actually play in that slot. So I don't think he was a real good slot guy anyway. And that's not really what he was asked to do when he was in Green Bay. I talked to Peter Bukowski. I said, what is it? He was like, it's all right. You know, he was okay. They didn't keep him. They could have kept him for cheaper, but they didn't. They went and got the kid, Xavier McKinney from New York, and paid him a whole bunch of money. When people are willing to pay a whole bunch of money to replace you, and they could have kept you, and you were their draft choice, you always have to be weary with these free agents and wonder, why are they out there? Savage was not on the market because Green Bay couldn't pay him. Because they paid another guy almost 3 times the money the Jaguars paid Savage. Savage was on the market because Green Bay didn't want him anymore. So when that happens, you have to wonder why. And that goes back to being a buyer and seller. So you go buy somebody else, what somebody else doesn't want, while they're buying something bigger. It's like, okay, yeah, we had this house for 20 years, raised our kids in it. This is great for us, but now we're going to upgrade and move out. To somebody else coming along, man, that's the greatest house. They've been living in an apartment their whole life, right? But you're going on to this other thing, right? That's all good. But here's the thing. Don't get in competition with me with the house I just sold you, and I have the one that I just bought, and then you think you're me. You're not. It's different. It's a different level of financial commitment. That was in Green Bay. Different level of obviously comfort and production, and it's newer and it's more functional. And see, that's what the Green Bay believes they got in Xavier McKinney and what they didn't have in Darnell Savage. The Jaguars can't just continue to be buyers. They have to eventually be sellers. They have to be the person that's you're making a choice to not keep Darnell Savage, Andre Cisco, right? And you go out and get Javon Holland. That's your upgrade. And let somebody else come along and give Andre Cisco $25 million. You ain't going to do it. That's what they have to eventually transition to. But when you do that, and he was the guy you picked in the 3rd round when he was hurt, you still have to answer up for that. And you have to be able to tell the owner, and you have to tell everybody else, well, why'd you pick him? And all draft picks don't work. But you still have to tell me what happened with his development. We used the resource on him, it didn't work, and it cost us to have to go out and get another resource from another team that we paid more money, and he ain't that much better than him, if you ask me. Those are the type of things that the Jaguars are going to have to find out, and it's good to find them out about young players right now. I don't know if there was an edict. I don't know if it was just Doug's idea. Because with this organization, usually who plays and who doesn't is usually the coach's decision. Who comes and who goes is usually the GM decision. Well, this organization, you have no idea. I don't know if Shad says, look, I need my young guys to play because I need them eval for the next. I don't know. Nobody knows anything because nobody tells us anything. I guess it's a need to know basis. All you need to know is this. We will be here. We will be here with more on Locked On Jaguars tomorrow, and a crossover on Thursday, and a game preview on Friday. Also over on Locked On NFL is a double dose. Tyler Rowland in the morning. Make sure you check out the new Locked On NFL show. Tyler Rowland will hit you over your head with a double shot of espresso and swing by the barbershop later on and see what we gossiping about. All right. All right, man. For all of y'all, man, take care of yourselves. Happy holidays to you too, by the way. It's I don't wait till that day to say it. I say it now. I say happy holidays because it'll go from here all the way through January the 1st. But enjoy a lot of football. A lot of football is coming up over the next 7 or 8 days. You're going to get an NFL game just about every day starting Thursday. So make sure you tune in to Locked On Jaguars tomorrow. We'll see you here. Take care of yourself.